You don't wake up in the morning. You wake up inside a pattern, a rhythm that's been repeating itself for weeks, months, sometimes lifetimes. Before your eyes even adjust to the light, your energy has already returned to its default setting. You check your phone. You remember a task you didn't complete. You feel the weight of something unresolved, and without realizing it, you're back inside a reality that looks exactly like yesterday. But what if that's not because life is repetitive, but because your attention is the first thing you feed with focus and becomes the architect of your day? And this is where most people misunderstand manifestation. You're not manifesting what you desire. You're manifesting what your attention consistently energizes. Whether it's joy, fear, guilt, or longing, the field responds to what's alive in your awareness and not what you say you want. This is quantum manifestation. It's not magic. It's not wishful thinking. It's frequency selection through vibrational focus. And if you don't understand this, you will keep repeating the same reality over and over again. Pause now and ask yourself gently, where is your attention right now? If that question stirred something in you, consider subscribing. You may be exactly where your next quantum leap begins. Attention is not passive. It's not observation. It's not just thinking. Attention is investment. It's the act of channeling your energy into a specific frequency. When you pay attention to something, you activate it. You plug into its vibration and give it life. This is why you can go years trying to heal, but keep attracting the same relationship, because your focus is still orbiting around what hurt you, not to resolve it, but to resist it. And resistance is energy too. In fact, resistance is one of the strongest forms of attention. Here's the paradox. You think you're avoiding what you fear, but in avoiding it, you're actually feeding it, because the universe doesn't recognize negation. It recognizes focus, and focus is a form of consent. So when your attention clings to the worst-case scenario, you are pre-selecting a vibrational match for it, not because you deserve it, not because it's fated, but because you're rehearsing its possibility again and again with energy. The subconscious doesn't care about logic, it cares about repetition, and repetition is what creates resonance. Most people think they're blocked, that their manifestation isn't working, that they're not aligned, but the truth is, they're just exhausted. Their attention is leaking in 10 directions, toward worry, shame, overthinking, and micromanaging outcomes. It's not that you don't have the power to create quantum events, it's that your energy is too fragmented to collapse a wave, because in quantum mechanics, the field remains infinite until the observer chooses a frequency. But if your observer is distracted, fearful, or conflicted, the collapse is distorted, or delayed, or it mirrors the confusion. Manifestation is not a technique, it's a return to energetic coherence. Let's go deeper. There's a reason your relationships feel familiar, a reason you hit the same wall in your finances, a reason every time things start to flow, something pulls you back. It's not sabotage, it's attention being hijacked by unconscious programs. Imagine your awareness as a lens, but the lens is smudged with memory, fear, emotion, and inherited beliefs. So no matter what you try to manifest, the image keeps reflecting the same distortion. This is not your fault. It's your conditioning. But now that you see it, it becomes your choice. Because attention can either be compulsive or conscious, and one leads to chaos, the other to creation. Quantum physics tells us the wave becomes a particle only when observed. In other words, your attention is the command center of reality. The observer effect isn't a metaphor. It's a scientific truth. But here's the part science is just beginning to catch up to. Your emotional state while observing matters. When you observe something with fear, you crystallize fear-based outcomes. When you observe with neutrality, you dissolve resistance. When you observe with conscious love or curiosity, you open portals to timelines you didn't know were possible. This is the invisible art of vibrational manipulation, and you practice it every day, and whether consciously or not. So now the question is no longer if you're manifesting. The question is, what are you energizing? Let's be brutally honest, but lovingly so. You can say the words, light the candles, play the binaural beats. But if the undercurrent of your attention is fear, that's what the field is receiving. You can visualize the dream. But if your nervous system is still wired for protection, you'll subconsciously block it, not because you're broken, but because you haven't yet reclaimed your attention from the stories it keeps telling. This is why attention is the most valuable spiritual currency, because whatever holds it shapes your life. Take a moment, close your eyes, and feel where your attention naturally goes when you stop trying. Does it go to a person, a deadline, a conversation that didn't? And well, this isn't judgment, It's data. It shows you what you've been energizing. And the first step to manifesting a different reality is not to suppress these patterns. It's to see them, to observe them from a place of clarity, not attachment, not resistance, just awareness. Because the moment you become aware of where your attention goes, you regain the power to redirect it. And redirection is manifestation. If something here is resonating, stay with it. What comes next might shift how you see your entire path. You've been taught to manage time, to manage goals, to manage emotions, but no one taught you to manage attention. And yet, attention is the root system beneath everything else. When your attention is grounded, your energy becomes magnetic, and manifestation becomes inevitable. This is not about control, it's about direction. Learning to aim your energy like a tuning fork toward the version of reality you actually want to live, not because it's easy, but because it's already possible. You're not here to repeat life, you're here to sculpt it with presence. And it starts with the choice to take your attention back. Where attention goes, energy flows. Where energy flows, reality forms. And where reality forms, your life begins to evolve beyond memory. You keep thinking you've left it behind. That pattern, that dynamic, that feeling of hitting a wall right when things begin to flow. You recognize the signs. A conversation that tightens your chest, a delay that feels strangely familiar, a silence that echoes with something old. And even though everything around you looks new, something in your energy knows the script. It's already memorized the outcome. We call it coincidence. We call it bad luck. But what if it's something else entirely? What if it's the residue of unprocessed energy, a frequency that never fully left your field, not because you didn't try hard enough, but because it remained entangled in your attention, because you never really released the signal. Most people live like rivers dammed by memory. They keep pushing forward while something invisible holds them back, not externally, but vibrationally, and so they repeat, not because they want to, not because they choose to, but because the energy hasn't moved, and energy must move. Energy is movement itself. Not force, not effort, but coherence in motion. And where it cannot move, it stagnates. And when it stagnates, it echoes. Through emotions, through behaviors, through people who feel like déjà vu wrapped in new names and faces. You think you're evolving. You are. But the evolution is layered. Some parts of you have already leapt timelines. Others are still stuck in rooms you no longer consciously visit. These rooms are built from moments you never fully felt, fears you tried to outgrow, stories you didn't know how to close. And they're still here, not to haunt you, but to be witnessed and finally moved. Because what isn't expressed impresses, it imprints on the body, on the subconscious, on the field of possibility. And until it's seen for what it really is, not a threat, but an invitation, it continues to orbit, waiting for your attention to unlock it. This is why it feels like life repeats. It's not life, it's energy, unresolved, unredirected, unintegrated, and your attention keeps brushing past it like fingers over a scar, not fully ready to press in. But healing doesn't require force. It requires permission. It requires presence. It requires the courage to sit with the frequency you've been avoiding, not to fix it, but to finally allow it to flow. There is a kind of sacred intelligence in the energy that gets stuck. It's not trying to ruin your life. It's trying to complete something your mind forgot, but your frequency still remembers. Perhaps it was the moment you decided love wasn't safe, or the second you associated joy with loss, or the pattern that taught you to equate stillness with failure. And so now, when life offers you expansion, your nervous system confuses it with danger, because it's not just thoughts that repeat, it's responses, it's energetic reflexes. It's your inner field running familiar scripts, hoping you'll notice the loop and choose something different, but you can't choose what you're not aware of. This is where stillness becomes a portal, because when you stop reacting, the loop reveals itself. You begin to see not just what's happening, but what's echoing beneath what's happening. A conversation with your partner isn't just about the dishes. It's about feeling unrecognized again. A missed opportunity isn't just frustrating. It's an echo of every time you felt unseen. A delay in money isn't just about numbers. It's an energy that carries the weight of inherited lack, shame, or guilt. None of this is your fault, but all of it is your opportunity. Because when you see the loop, you can dissolve it. Not by resisting, not by overcorrecting, but by returning to the root, the place where the energy stopped moving, and gently, lovingly, letting it breathe again. This is vibrational reprogramming. Not of thoughts, but of frequency. Not by thinking differently, but by relating differently to what arises, by honoring that what repeats is what hasn't yet been released. Sometimes this means feeling something you never let yourself feel. Sometimes it means forgiving the version of you that didn't know better. Sometimes it means letting go of the payoff you secretly received from staying stuck. Because yes, even pain can feel safe. If it's familiar, even struggle can feel like identity if we've worn it long enough. But you're not your trauma. You're not your timeline. You're not the repetition. You're the one who can notice it and then shift the rhythm. This is quantum liberation, the moment when awareness meets vibration and something clicks out of pattern and into possibility. But it won't come through resistance. Resistance is what built the loop in the first place. It will come through softness, through space, through an attention that no longer flinches when discomfort arises. That's when the loop dissolves. That's when the energy begins to reorganize. That's when you stop living inside the echo and begin creating new sound. Your field doesn't need more effort, it needs clarity. Clarity about what you've been feeding, what you've been fearing, and what you've been avoiding. Because your reality is responding to everything you won't look at, not to punish you, but to bring it forward, to reflect it, to ask, are you ready now? Ready not to fix it? To meet it, to honor it, to reintegrate it. And then, only then will it stop needing to return. This is energy in motion. This is release without collapse. This is healing without drama. This is the subtle art of attention, transmuting what once controlled you. No ceremony required, just a willingness to stay, to feel, to choose, to redirect. Because the moment you redirect, reality follows. Not in dramatic thunderclaps, but in quiet rearrangements. You'll notice new responses emerging from you. You'll walk into familiar situations and feel nothing. Not numbness, but peace. You'll realize that what used to trigger you now feels neutral, spacious, almost irrelevant. That's when you know the loop is broken, the energy has moved, and you are somewhere new. Not because life changed, but because your frequency finally did. You didn't force it, you didn't fix it. You simply stopped energizing the echo, and in doing so, you created space for the new tone of your life to emerge. Clear, resonant, aligned with who you're finally ready to be. If this moment opened a space inside you, consider subscribing. You're not alone in this journey, and there's more waiting in the field. Because the universe isn't trying to teach you a lesson, it's trying to give you your energy back. But you have to stop pouring it into the past. Breathe. You are not stuck. You are remembering how to move. And every breath, every choice, every moment of attention is an opening, a soft rupture in the repetition, a new doorway in the quantum field. A loop untied, a life reimagined, a reality, finally, ready to respond to who you are now. And when the energy begins to shift, it does so silently. There's no fanfare, no fireworks, just a feeling of space where there was once tension, an opening in the field that wasn't there before. You don't know it logically, but you feel it, a subtle click, a vibrational rearrangement. That's how you know the loop has started to break. But for the loop to fully dissolve, you must be willing to revisit its origin, not to relive it, but to reclaim the energy it's been holding hostage. This is where ancestral echoes come into play, because some of what you're carrying isn't even yours. It's imprinted, passed down, inherited like invisible DNA, beliefs that were never questioned, patterns that were never healed, fears that were normalized but never neutralized. Science calls it epigenetics. Energy remembers what the mind cannot. And if you don't bring presence to what's been passed to you, you might live out a reality that belongs to someone else's pain. This isn't about blame, it's about liberation. It's about recognizing that some of your energetic stagnation was absorbed before you had the words to resist it. And so the loop becomes multi-generational. Until someone, you, becomes conscious enough to interrupt the pattern, not through rebellion, but through awareness. That's the moment the energy begins to defrost. The moment the inherited frequency stops dictating your trajectory. The moment your nervous system begins to speak a new language, one rooted not in survival but in creation. Because when you were in survival, every repetition felt like safety. The familiar, even if painful, was something you knew how to hold, and your system clung to it, because clinging felt like control. But manifestation doesn't happen in control. It happens in coherence. And coherence begins when you no longer grip your past as an identity. So you loosen, you feel, you breathe into the discomfort without naming it, without analyzing it. You become curious instead of defensive, open instead of armored. And this subtle shift becomes a crack in the loop's architecture, and the light starts to pour in. You may not feel different right away. That's okay. Transformation doesn't always arrive with clarity. Sometimes It arrives with quiet. You'll notice it when your reaction softens, when your body doesn't tense the way it used to, when someone triggers an old story and you feel yourself observing instead of collapsing. That's how you'll know. The energy has moved. Not all of it, not forever, but enough for the field to reconfigure. Because the quantum field is always listening, always adjusting, always awaiting your energetic permission. And when you redirect your attention, even subtly, the field responds. But the key isn't speed, it's sincerity. You can't fake vibrational alignment. You can't rush integration. You must sit with it, feel it, let the echoes have their voice, and until they no longer need to scream. And when they finally go quiet, you'll be left with space, a holy space, a space where something new can take root, something aligned, something yours, not borrowed, not performed, not manifested from desperation, but received through presence. This is when attention becomes a sacred act, not just a cognitive function, but a spiritual ritual. Every time you place your awareness somewhere, you are blessing it with your essence. And whatever you bless, grows. So bless what expands you, bless what heals you, bless what calls you forward. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Because it's finally not a repetition, it's a choice. A conscious choice rooted in a frequency that reflects who you are becoming, not who you've been rehearsing. You are not a loop. You are the awareness that notices the loop, and that awareness is the portal. The moment you step through it, you stop living inside echoes. You begin to create original sound, your own tone, your own rhythm, your own vibration, encoded with intention. And that vibration is what creates quantum events, not because it's loud, but because it's clear. The quantum field doesn't respond to volume. It responds to coherence, and coherence begins with attention, steady, gentle, alive. So give your attention wisely. Give it as a sacred currency, because whatever holds your attention holds your energy, and whatever holds your energy holds the key to the next version of your life. You don't have to understand everything to begin, you just have to begin. You just have to feel where the loop lives, and choose to stay with it long enough for it to loosen. And when it loosens, breathe. Don't fill the space too fast. Let it remain open. Let your field adjust, because silence is not emptiness, it's preparation, and your next reality is already listening. You've been taught to stay positive, to focus on the good, to speak abundance, even when you're feeling small, and so you try. You visualize, you affirm, you repeat phrases that sound bright, even when your body is dim. And yet, the change doesn't come, the reality stays the same. Or worse, it swings back like a rubber band stretched too far. Why? Because the universe doesn't respond to what you pretend. It responds to what you are, not what you believe intellectually, not what you say aloud, but what your frequency emits when no one is watching. This is the paradox that keeps so many seekers trapped, trying to manifest light while resisting shadow, projecting high vibration while secretly fearing what lurks underneath. But energy doesn't work like that. Energy is not moral. It's not impressed by your spiritual vocabulary. It's not moved by how many times you say, "I am abundant." It is attuned to coherence. And coherence means honesty. So if you're trying to force positivity over unacknowledged pain, you're creating internal friction, not alignment. This is the illusion of polarity, that one side is better than the other, that positive is good and negative is bad, that you must always vibrate high to be worthy of miracles. But polarity is not the truth, it's the lens, the filter through which fragmented perception arises. Truth, vibrational truth, exists in the space between the poles, not in suppression, not in spiritual bypassing, but in the sacred neutrality of what is. Because neutrality is not detachment, it's presence. It's the ability to hold both light and shadow without collapsing into either, to observe both ends of the spectrum, desire and fear, longing and avoidance, without feeding either. It's not choosing the positive thought over the negative one. It's stepping outside the duality and returning to the seat of awareness, the field before labels, before judgment, before good or bad. From this space, attention becomes pure, undiluted by narrative, untouched by polarity, and in that purity, energy reorganizes. This is not common practice, it's not easy, but it is powerful, because the more subtle the frequency, the more precise the manifestation. Polarity, by contrast, is loud. It swings. It seeks resolution through opposition. You want something, so you push against what you don't want. You try to release fear by denying its existence. You try to align by escaping the discomfort. But all of that is still polarization. It's still resistance, and resistance always energizes the very thing it opposes. That's why you can focus on money and still create lack. Focus on love and still create abandonment, because underneath the surface of desire is a current of avoidance, and that's what the field responds to. The universe is not measuring your intentions. It's measuring your signal, and your signal is composed not just of your conscious focus, but your unconscious frequency. This is why neutrality is liberation, because it removes the charge. It dissolves the tension. It allows energy to return to its natural state, flow. It doesn't mean you don't want things. It means your wanting isn't contaminated by fear. It means your dreams aren't born from wounds. And when your dreams come from wholeness, they manifest without resistance, because they're no longer asking the field to fix something. They're simply asking the field to reflect something that's already true inside of you. But for that truth to arise, the charge must be released. You have to stop forcing, stop performing, stop pretending that light is better than dark. Both are necessary, even in physics. Particle and wave, even in nature, inhale and exhale, even in birth, expansion and contraction. Everything in this universe oscillates, pulses, breathes in dual rhythms. But the power is not in choosing sides. It's in becoming the space that holds both. Conscious observer, the vibrational still point, the axis between polarities. From here, you stop reacting, you start resonating, and resonance is the language of creation. Not effort, not control, not, I need to manifest this now, but clarity, coherence, a deep knowing that your reality is a mirror, and when you stop distorting the reflection, what you desire begins to emerge. You don't have to chase it, you don't have to seduce it, you just have to become the frequency that holds space for it without grasping, and that can only happen in neutrality. This is the hidden doorway, the subtle shift from trying to create to allowing what's already aligned. But this doesn't mean passivity. It means precision. It means becoming so vibrationally honest that nothing inside of you is pulling in opposite directions. You say yes, and your field agrees. You imagine, and your nervous system feels safe to receive. You move, and your actions ripple. From clarity, not compensation. This is quantum alignment. It's not about being perfect, it's about being undivided. And that begins the moment you stop feeding polarity with attention. Notice when your mind tries to swing, I can't think. That it's negative. I have to believe this. It's high vibe. I should feel this, otherwise I'll manifest the wrong thing. That's not consciousness, that's control dressed in spiritual language. Consciousness simply sees. It notices without judgment. It holds presence without trying to fix. And in that space, everything begins to recalibrate. You don't have to force positivity. You have to find peace with what is, and from there choose with presence. That's where true power lives. Not in chasing the light, but in becoming the light that doesn't resist the dark. Not in manipulating energy from fear, but in attuning your energy to what's already available when you're no longer split inside. And this is why so many people feel frustrated with manifestation, because they're still polarizing themselves, choosing one side of their emotional truth and abandoning the other. But manifestation isn't about being right, it's about being whole. And wholeness begins with permission to feel, to witness, to integrate. That's the shift. That's the invitation. And maybe now you're ready to stop choosing sides and start choosing presence. There is a place within you that doesn't rush to label. It doesn't react. It doesn't reach for control. It simply watches, not passively, but with presence, not with distance, but with depth. A space that neither clings to the light nor hides from the shadow. A space that holds both without becoming either. That place is neutrality, not the neutrality of apathy, not the numbing stillness of avoidance, but a sacred equilibrium, the kind that arises only when you no longer need to judge your experience to make sense of it. Neutrality is not the absence of energy. It is its most refined form, the 0 point, the silent field where all potential lives, unchosen, uncollapsed, but fully present. It's where the wave still breathes before becoming particle, where the observer has not yet made meaning, where the story hasn't solidified and therefore anything is still possible. This is not where most people live. Most people live in reaction, in polarity, in charge, in story. They say, this is good, that is bad. I must move toward one and away from the other. And in doing so, they create resistance. And in resistance, energy gets distorted. But neutrality dissolves distortion. It allows what is to be without attachment, or aversion. And in that spaciousness, the loop loses its grip. The pattern no longer has something to push against. The frequency begins to uncoil, and what once felt dense starts to feel spacious, not because the external changed, but because your relationship to it softened. This is vibrational mastery, not controlling what happens, but choosing how you attend to it, with what quality of presence, with what tone of awareness. Because the same situation observed from judgment contracts, but the same situation observed from neutrality transforms. It begins to dissolve in your field, not because you forced it to leave, but because it was no longer being held in place by reaction. And that's what energy does when it's no longer met with friction. It moves, it breathes, it reorganizes, but neutrality must be felt, not faked. It cannot be performed. It must arise from genuine surrender, the kind that says, I no longer need this to be different to feel safe. I no longer need to fix this moment to feel aligned. That's when power returns, because your power was never in your control. It was in your presence, and presence is never polarized. It's whole, it's open, it's neutral. You might wonder, but if I'm neutral, won't I stop manifesting? Won't I lose my edge? No, because neutrality isn't absence of desire, it's the absence of desperation. It's wanting without grasping, intending without forcing, allowing without collapsing. It's trusting that the field responds to your state, not your struggle. And the state of neutrality is the most magnetic of all. Why? Because it holds no tension, no inner conflict, no yes but frequency that tells the universe you want something, but don't believe you can have it. In neutrality, there is no energetic contradiction. You want, you allow, you receive. You witness life unfolding not as a test, but as a mirror. Not as a battlefield, but as a canvas. And you become the artist whose brush is awareness. This is not passive. This is participation at the most subtle level. Because from neutrality, your attention becomes clean. It's no longer distorted by hope or fear. It lands gently on what is, and in that landing begins to transmute it. You may not see the shift right away, but you'll feel it. In your breath, in your body, in the quality of silence within you. You'll notice that you're no longer pulled into the old loops, that thoughts come, but don't hook you. Emotions rise, but don't flood you. That's the power of neutrality. It doesn't suppress emotion, it changes your relationship to emotion. You still feel, but you don't feed. You still experience, but you don't collapse. And this shift is everything, because manifestation doesn't come from force, it comes from frequency. And frequency is shaped by attention. And attention, when neutral, becomes the most fertile ground for quantum events. Because it's not projecting the past, it's not rehearsing the future, it's simply present. And presence is the only portal through which new timelines emerge. So how do you cultivate neutrality? Not through effort, but through awareness. Begin by noticing your charge. Where does your mind rush to fix, to label, to avoid? Where do you feel urgency? Where does your attention cling? In those places, pause, feel the pull, acknowledge the reaction, and then breathe. Ask yourself, can I be with this, just for a moment, without trying to change it? That question alone begins to dissolve the charge. Because the moment you stop resisting, you start realigning. You stop running from the wave and become the observer again. And as the observer, you reclaim your creative power, not because you've done anything dramatic, but because you've remembered the most sacred truth. Reality does not respond to what you do, it responds to how you be. And being, in its purest form, is neutral, not indifferent, not disconnected, but whole. Neutrality says, I am not afraid of what arises. I don't need this moment to be different to be okay. I can hold what is, and in doing so, create space for what can be. And in that space, the quantum reorganizes. The wave collapses into form, but from clarity, not compulsion, from coherence, not conflict, from presence, not projection. That's when manifestation becomes effortless, not because you're forcing a reality into existence, but because your inner field has become coherent enough to allow it in, because you're no longer leaking energy into resistance, because your attention is finally clean, and clean attention is pure creation. So the invitation is simple but profound. Stop trying to feel better. Start feeling more fully without judgment. Stop trying to raise your vibration. Start releasing the charge that lowers it. Stop choosing sides. Start choosing space. Space where possibility lives. The space where the field hears you clearly. The space where life doesn't have to shout to get your attention, because you've already returned to the silence where it speaks. This silence is not empty. It's not void. It's not absence. It is the field. And in that field, everything you've ever desired already exists. not in form, but in potential. Waiting for a frequency that can hold it. Waiting for a neutrality that says I am ready now, not because I've forced myself to feel high, but because I've released the need to feel in control. And that's the real shift. The shift that turns intention into embodiment, desire into magnetism, energy into form, not through effort, but through stillness, not through push, but through presence, not through polarity, but through the field beyond it. Neutrality doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. It gives you access to the subtle layers of creation that are missed when your energy is loud, scattered, or polarized. It sharpens your inner vision, not to analyze, but to attune. From neutrality, you can walk through your day without reacting to every emotion, every piece of news, every fluctuation in someone else's mood. You begin to see life as it is, not as your wounds perceive it. That alone is liberation. You'll notice the space between stimulus and response getting wider. You'll sense yourself pausing, breathing, redirecting, not because you're restraining yourself, but because you're no longer being pulled. Your attention becomes a sanctuary. It rests where it chooses. It returns where it's needed. It's no longer hijacked by fear or desire. It's grounded, deliberate, and vibrationally clear. From this place, the decisions you make are cleaner. The people you attract are different. The timing of your manifestations becomes smoother, less frantic, more synchronous. Because you're no longer seeking outcomes to escape the present, you're creating outcomes that echo your presence. This is subtle work, and the world may not validate it at first, but you'll feel it in your nervous system, in your sleep, in your breath, in how you respond to challenge, in the way you no longer abandon yourself to pursue a future that was never truly aligned. That's when you know neutrality is working, when you don't need to collapse your energy to be loved, when you don't need to hide your needs to feel safe, when you can sit in silence and feel whole, without needing to fix, attract, or manifest a thing. And ironically, that's when everything begins to shift, because life starts matching your coherence, not your craving. It's the paradox of power. You attract what you no longer need to chase. You create what you no longer try to control. You become what you no longer resist being, all from neutrality. To help you anchor this space, here's a simple practice, a ritual of vibrational neutrality. Close your eyes, place one hand over your heart, the other on your belly. Feel your breath, not to change it, just to notice. Now, name silently the emotion that feels most charged right now. Not to solve it, not to get rid of it, just to honor it. Say gently inside, I see you. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to stay. Now imagine a still pool of water in the center of your being, unmoving, reflective, deep. Let that pool hold the emotion, the thought, the tension, without trying to shift it. Just let it rest. Let yourself rest. This is not about clearing. It's about holding, about allowing all parts of you to be witnessed by something deeper than judgment, by you in your most neutral, loving form. Stay here for a moment. Let your frequency settle. Let your body slow. Let your field return to stillness. You can open your eyes when ready, or stay. This is the frequency of receptivity. This is the signal of neutrality. And from here, manifestation becomes magnetic, organic, gentle, because you are no longer manifesting from tension. You're creating from wholeness. Imagine your field like a crystal. The more still it is inside, the more it amplifies light. The more coherent, the more powerful, the more aligned, the more effortless its resonance. You become that crystal. Still, clear, brilliant, magnetic. And when you move through the world with this frequency, everything recalibrates around you. Not because you forced it, but because your vibration made clarity inevitable. This is your new baseline, not perfection, but neutrality. A return to the middle, the sacred center, the 0 point from which all creation is born. And the more often you return here, not as escape, but as home, the more your reality begins to mirror this sacred balance. Fewer reactions, more resonance, fewer loops, more flow, fewer attachments, more freedom. This isn't just a spiritual state, it's a new operating system, one that doesn't rely on effort to create, but on precision, on trust, on vibrational truth. And it's from here that your next chapter will begin, not as a compensation for the past, but as a pure reflection of who you're ready to become. Manifestation isn't a mystery. It's a process, vibrational, coherent, and constant. It doesn't pause while you sleep. It doesn't wait until you set intentions on a new moon. It's always on, always responding, always shaping form from frequency. And the core of that process rests on 3 pillars, 3 energetic movements that happen long before the result arrives. Most people never see them because they're internal, silent, subtle, but they're there, And once you understand them, you begin to create on purpose. The first is acceptance, not as resignation, not as giving up, but as removal of resistance. Because resistance is what keeps old energy alive, the thought you keep rejecting, emotion you won't let surface, the part of you that still believes something is wrong with what is. And so your attention keeps pushing, resisting, denying, and in doing so, feeding exactly what you want to release. But when you accept, radically, fully, without narrative, the field softens, because what you resist persists, but what you accept dissolves. Acceptance is not passive, it's transmutational. It says to the energy, you no longer need to knock louder. I'm listening now. And in that listening, energy completes itself. Cycles close, loops loosen, emotions move through instead of looping within. The second pillar is symbolic reinterpretation, because nothing in your reality is random. Everything you experience is rich with meaning, not literal, but vibrational. And when you learn to decode the symbols, the repetition stops being punishment and starts being invitation. That argument, a call to speak your truth. That delay, a test of your energetic integrity. That closed door, a redirection toward alignment you didn't yet recognize. Symbolism is the soul's first language, and when you return to it, life becomes a mirror, not a maze. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what is this showing me about my frequency? And in that shift, your attention returns to its rightful place, not in blame, but in sovereignty. You realize you're not here to manipulate circumstances. You're here to alchemize meaning, and once meaning changes, the field responds. Because the quantum doesn't operate on logic, it responds to pattern. And when you shift the symbolic pattern, the external reorganizes accordingly. The third pillar, the one that anchors the others, is redirection of attention, because attention is the carrier wave of your energy. And wherever it lands, your frequency follows. When you become conscious of where your attention rests, not just when things are calm, but in the micro moments, you regain the steering wheel of your manifestation. You stop looping. You stop energizing what you no longer want to live. You stop feeding the echoes, and you begin to redirect, not by force, but by choice. You say, I see the loop, I feel the charge, and I choose, gently, to return my attention elsewhere, over and over again, until the signal stabilizes, until the field reflects a new reality, not because you demanded it, but because you became the version of yourself who no longer needed to rehearse the old one. This is the tripod: acceptance, reinterpretation, redirection. Together, they create a frequency that the universe can't ignore, because it's no longer distorted, no longer conflicted, no longer leaking into contradiction. You are clear, and clarity is magnetism. But remember, this clarity is not intensity, it's stillness. Not assertion, but resonance. Not, how do I get what I want, but, how do I return to who I truly am, the one who lives that reality naturally. That's when the results appear. That's when the timeline jumps. That's when quantum events unfold, not as magic, but as inevitability. If you've been feeling the repetition, the loops, the echoes, the energetic weight of things that won't shift, this is where the path begins. Let us know in the comments, what's the pattern that's asking to be released? And if you feel the readiness to shift deeper, explore the Moyle reprogramming. It was designed to help you reclaim your frequency from the echoes and redirect it toward the life you know is already available. Because this is not theory, this is architecture. And your attention is the blueprint. Your feeling is the ink. Your belief is the ink that draws timelines into matter. So ask yourself now, what are you building? A repetition, or a reality, reaction, or a new resonance? The field is listening, and your signal is already being received. Now, the invitation is simple. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait to be perfect. Return to the three. Accept what is, fully. Read the symbol, truthfully. Redirect attention intentionally, again and again and again, until your outer life begins to reflect your inner decision. That is quantum manifestation. That is vibrational coherence. That is the moment when energy becomes form, without effort, without doubt, without delay. And maybe that moment is already happening now. You thought it was yours, the opportunity, the relationship, the alignment that looked perfect on paper, the moment your mind whispered finally, and then it collapsed, disappeared, shifted into something unrecognizable, and you called it failure, you called it rejection, you called it just not meant to be. But what if it was something else entirely? What if the collapse wasn't a mistake, but a message? What if the no was a recalibration? What if the very thing you were grieving was protection? Not protection from danger, but from distortion. Because here's what most people don't realize. Not every opportunity is aligned with your frequency. Not every outcome you desire is actually coherent with the version of you you're becoming. Sometimes, what looks like alignment is actually compensation, a vibrational compromise you're trying to justify with logic, and the field, in its quiet, intelligent precision, says no, not as punishment, but as preservation, because that contract you almost signed would have tethered your energy to a timeline you were meant to leave, because that relationship you were chasing would have reinforced a belief you're finally dissolving, because that outcome you were holding on to so tightly was born from a frequency you've already outgrown. And so it falls apart, not because you failed to manifest, but because you succeeded in evolving. Your frequency shifted, and what doesn't match can no longer stay. This is the part of the path that hurts, not because something was taken, but because something inside you is still learning to trust what's arriving in its place. You ask, why would the universe let me get so close? But maybe closeness was the point. Maybe you needed to almost receive it, to realize it wasn't what you really needed. Because sometimes, clarity comes wrapped in frustration, and protection arrives disguised as loss. This is vibrational discernment, the ability to feel when something is present in form, but absent in resonance, to sense when the field is saying, not this, not now, not like this, not because you're not ready, but because your soul is asking for something truer. But here's the catch. If your identity is attached to the outcome, you'll interpret the loss as a reflection of your worth, and that misinterpretation keeps you stuck, as you'll try to manifest from the wound again, instead of from the wisdom. You'll start chasing outcomes to feel safe, rather than using your energy to create from safety. But when you pause, truly pause, and feel into the why beneath the collapse, you'll find something deeper than disappointment. You'll find coherence. You'll feel the part of you that knew this wasn't right, the inner voice you silenced, the micro-tensions you ignored, the dreams that began to feel heavier the closer they got, and then you'll understand. You weren't being denied. You were being redirected to resonance. This is the hidden kindness of the quantum field. It doesn't give you what your ego wants. It gives you what your frequency is ready to hold. And that readiness isn't measured in intensity. It's measured in integrity. So the job isn't to force things to work. It's to align deeply enough that what isn't truly yours falls away without needing to be torn out. You'll know you've reached that place when what breaks no longer breaks you. When what ends feels like completion, not collapse. When your nervous system remains open even in uncertainty, because you've stopped tying your safety to external outcomes. You've stopped needing guarantees. You've started trusting your field. That's when the magic begins. That's when the reorganization starts. That's when new options emerge that you couldn't have seen from the old frequency, because the frustration cleared the signal. It interrupted the echo. It made room for something new, but only if you let it. Only if you stop clinging to the shape of what you thought you wanted and start opening to the feeling that was underneath it. Safety, love, freedom, expression, abundance. That's what you really wanted. Not the person, not the title, not the moment. You wanted the vibration. And that vibration can arrive in infinite forms, but it can only enter when you stop insisting it were the one you pictured. So the next time life says no, pause. Don't resist. Don't collapse. Listen. What part of you is being protected? What timeline is being closed? What version of you is ready to rise? This is how you turn frustration into fuel. Not by pretending you're okay, but by becoming so present with what is that your energy reorders itself without force, because the field is always listening. And when you say, I trust this redirection, you become the frequency that's ready to receive something truer, not louder, not shinier, not bigger, just truer. And that's all the universe is ever trying to give you. It always comes back to this, not the visualization, not the technique, not the affirmation repeated until it loses its meaning. Just this. Where is your attention now? Not where it was yesterday, not where it should be tomorrow. Now, because now is the only frequency the universe can hear. Now is where the wave collapses. Now is where the timeline shifts. Now is where your energy becomes decision. Silent, subtle, sovereign. We spend so much time chasing what we want, without realizing that what we want is waiting for us at the end of attention, not intention, attention, not planning, presence. The truth is, manifestation doesn't begin when you write something. down. It begins when you begin living in a state that can hold it, not just for 5 minutes in the morning, but in the quiet moments, in the way you choose to breathe when tension arrives, in the way you walk, speak, and listen when no one is watching, because the field is always watching, not with eyes, but with vibration. And every thought you energize, every fear you rehearse, every emotion you resist or embrace, becomes instruction. It doesn't take effort, it takes consistency, not perfection, presence. And that presence is shaped by one thing: your attention. You see, attention isn't neutral, it's sculpting. Whatever you feed expands, whatever you ignore atrophies, whatever you hold gently in observation begins to evolve. This is the real alchemy, not turning lead into gold, but turning experience into evolution. You are not just experiencing life, you are focusing it into form. Every conversation, every judgment, every curiosity, they all ripple outward into geometry, frequency, matter. So the question isn't just, what do I want to manifest? It's, what am I willing to give my attention to? Moment after moment, even when it doesn't look like it's working. Because it's always working, just not always in ways the mind understands. Sometimes the shift is so gentle, so internal, that you miss it, until one day you realize you've become someone new. Someone who no longer reaches for the old reactions, someone who no longer vibrates at the same questions, someone who no longer needs the proof to trust the unfolding. And that's when you know the quantum has reorganized, not because the world exploded into fireworks, but because your silence became coherent. That is the final power of attention. It transforms you before it transforms your life. And once you are transformed, the life adjusts without negotiation. This is the quietest kind of magic. No drama, no display, just a clean shift in direction. Like a compass needle realigning, like a breath deepening, like a signal becoming so clear that the next timeline can't help but respond. You're not chasing outcomes anymore. You're not performing high vibration. You're simply living with focus, with intention, with grace. And from that frequency, you walk through the world like a signal tower, not broadcasting want, but coherence. Not hunger, but embodiment. People feel it before they understand it. The field begins to respond before you've spoken. And reality just begins to feel different. Less dense, less stuck, more alive, more available. Because your energy is no longer scattered. Because your signal is no longer contradicting itself. Because your attention has become devotional, not to a goal, not to a result, but to the version of you that knows who you are, even when life doesn't look like it yet. That's the one who creates. That's the one who manifests timelines from the inside out. And when you're aligned with that version, when your attention is no longer in yesterday's loop, when your energy no longer leaks into polarity, when your nervous system no longer resists what is, then reality doesn't need to be controlled. It flows. It rises to meet you. It mirrors your clarity with precision. It reveals paths that logic couldn't plan. And you don't even call it manifestation anymore. You just call it life, alive, aligned, quantum. If this vision opens something in you, even a soft space, a new thought, a sense of remembering, this is the moment to keep moving. Subscribe to stay connected to the frequency. And if you're ready to integrate this energy deeper, explore the next reprogramming waiting in the comments. You don't need to know where it leads, only that it's yours. Because the moment you focus your attention, life begins to focus its gifts.